Okay, welcome everyone. It is nice to see you here. For those of you that are joining me for the first time, um, I like to do these calls twice a month, typically on the first and third Thursday of the month. And we are here to answer questions that may be coming up for my students, anyone that has purchased a course with me. And if you're new, you do have lifetime access at this time to come and participate in these live calls. Inside your student dashboard, there is a link to submit your questions in advance, and that tends to bump it up the list for me. If I don't address a question you may have submitted on this call, then it will be added to the roster for the next time we meet. So with that, I will typically try to address the questions that were submitted in advance. However, I do create moments of rest to address questions coming from folks that are in the space here joining me live. So as I'm going through, please feel invited to share your comments, questions, reflections in the chat box, and I will take moments of pause to try to address those here in the live space. We'll go for about 1 hour. And again, if I don't address your question, please feel invited to submit it through the Google form, and that will draw my attention to it the next time we meet. To get started, I might just ask, who is here with me and where are you coming from? I would love to just give you a little shout out here in this space. You can type that there in the chat there. We have, from Ecuador, welcome, nice to see you there. Okay, so I'm going to get started, and then again, as thoughts, reflections come up, please feel free to share them in the chat, and I will take an opportunity to make sure that I address them. California, Low Country, South Carolina, welcome. Dayton, Ohio, welcome. Very good. Okay. So for today, there are 3 questions that I think are primarily going to guide our discussion, and then, of course, whatever comes up as we go through. So the first question, is it self-abandoning to return to an avoidant partner that kicked me out? Could I have changed this outcome if I communicated better? Secondly, I am living with an avoidant partner after we broke up, but I don't have the funds to move out yet. Should I handle this with no contact, and how? And lastly, how do we break free from the influence of a bad parent and stop repeating those cycles in love? Okay, so I think we have a pretty cohesive theme going on here, and I'm going to try to address these in order. So the first one I want to address, is it self-abandoning to return to an avoidant partner who hurt me, and could I have changed the outcome if I communicated better? So if you have ever struggled with the pain of rejection, attachment wounding, or feeling stuck in an unhealthy relationship, this is a perfect question and segment for you. Now, this question was posed by a member of our online community, and I'm just going to start by reading the question in full so that we can have some context to work with. I'm an anxious partner with an avoidant individual and recently was kicked out of my avoidant partner's house for attempting to express how rude his behavior is and that it is unacceptable and hurtful. Being thrown out was extremely painful, humiliating, and triggering to experience because I felt emotionally and physically abandoned, and that debilitated me for days. I begged and begged for him to talk to me, but he stonewalled me for weeks, even through the holidays. A decision to let go and walk away seems like the obvious choice, but I feel paralyzed and regret that I still couldn't take the right communication approach and get a better outcome as a result. I want advice if I'm abandoning myself by begging to be with someone who is regularly inconsistent and inconsiderate because of his avoidant attachment style. I'm genuinely too traumatized from being kicked out, but equally traumatized by my inability to control my anger and approach him. It really triggers my abandonment wounds in the worst way, especially since I had to spend the holidays alone. Okay. So first I want to acknowledge the incredible pain and confusion and vulnerability that this kind of situation must be creating for you. And what you're experiencing, it sounds like, is a complex web of attachment wounds, triggered emotions, and very logistical challenges. So it's not easy to navigate something like this when you're feeling overwhelmed. And I would say the fact that you're asking for guidance shows that you have some courage and resiliency here, and you are committed to healing. Additionally, the way in which you ask this question suggests to me that you kind of already know the answer to it. But I think it's worthwhile digging into this so that you can feel more assuredly seated in your truth and in your knowing. So while the situation is painful, I do think there is hope. And it can also be a catalyst for deeper healing for you, right? An opportunity to grow in some way around what is coming up for you in this experience. And so it's my hope that by the end of this discussion, you will have a clearer understanding of maybe why this dynamic unfolded, how you can start to break patterns like this that may not be serving you, and how you can move forward with an air of self-compassion and self-forgiveness. So let's just dive into how we're going to explore this topic for today. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at what is the core issue here, right? So before we dive into solutions, it's kind of important to understand what might be the deeper dynamics at play. So a few things I want to point out about the situation. Expressing your needs and setting boundaries is not unhealthy, but it is essential in any relationship. And it's part of what makes emotional intimacy possible, right? But when a partner responds to your expression by throwing you out of the house, right? That's an extreme response, right? So how a partner responds to your needs is a really strong indicator as to whether they are capable of showing up in a loving and secure way. So kicking you out of the house and stonewalling you for weeks undermines any kind of safety or trust that is necessary for a healthy relationship. And it kind of suggests that the relationship is unsafe and therefore incompatible, at least not without significant therapeutic intervention. Okay. And it is natural to wonder, if I had used better communication, would it have changed the outcome? But it's important to realize that you may not have as much power as you think you do, right? Maybe it would have mollified the result by 20%, but the extreme quality intensity of this reaction suggests that even if you had refined your communication, it would not have been enough to fix a dynamic like this, where one person is completely unwilling to meet you halfway and to go so far as to put you in that kind of situation. So does that mean that I could try to fix things, right? If I learn better communication, could I fix this? So if you keep trying to fix a dynamic where your needs, no matter what you say, are being dismissed or punished, then it reinforces a belief that you are the problem and you need to work harder to earn love and to fix it. And that's a cycle that only deepens the pain and can leave you feeling rejected, unseen, and abandoned. So instead, I'd have you look at this situation as revealing a deeper truth about what's going on. Your needs matter, and you deserve to be in a relationship where your needs are met without a fear of rejection or some kind of retaliation. Okay. So let's dig into this a little bit more. The first thing, the first takeaway here is that expressing your needs is important. Okay. So there's a sort of a sub-question there's really several questions being asked here. Let's say this one is, was it wrong to express how his behavior was unacceptable, and could I have approached it better? So it's not wrong to indicate that someone's behavior is unacceptable, especially if it is violating a boundary of yours. It is courageous and it is necessary to express how someone's behavior is hurtful. And a secure partner wants to know that because they care about your well-being and they want to contribute to your good feelings, and they're going to want to know how they could course correct, right? But the fact that this situation led to such an extreme reaction, throwing you out without having somewhere to go, it shows that the relationship does not currently have the emotional stability and safety that you really need. And that's really important information for you. Okay. In a healthy relationship, a partner would be able to hold space for your concerns and for their concerns, even if the conversation is painful or uncomfortable. And if the relationship lacks that kind of foundation, it becomes nearly impossible to build the trust required to achieve some kind of long-term success, let alone a healthy attachment. Okay. So the second thing, going back to that communication, if I had communicated better, would it have prevented the stonewalling, right? And the rejection that happened? Again, it could have softened the reaction, but it's not likely to have prevented this altogether. This behavior indicates an extreme response. And prior to that, you had mentioned that he was rude, hurtful, and dismissive, suggesting that there were deeper issues leading up to the situation all along the way. So you want to ask yourself, do I want to be in a relationship where expressing my needs puts the entire relationship at risk, let alone the roof over my head, right? So the paralysis that you might be feeling can stem from an earlier wound where expressing your truth led to some kind of rejection or lack of safety. And so there's a younger, earlier part of us that doesn't recognize the power you have in the situation. And so it's likely that the relationship is triggering that kind of pain, maybe the same pain. But because of that, it could be offering you an opportunity to address that part of you. And maybe it's coming up now because despite the precariousness of what feels like your situation, you actually do have the capacity and the resources to address it in a new and different way. So considering that perhaps you don't need to tolerate a dynamic where your needs are dismissed and your safety is being threatened. And I would go so far to say you don't, right? So am I being self-abandoning by begging for a relationship with someone who dismissed my needs? Yes, this is in fact the definition of self-abandonment, okay? And it reinforces the idea that their feelings matter more than your emotional and even physical well-being, okay? So you really want to ask yourself, what am I actually holding on to? Why do I feel so compelled to stay in a dynamic that threatens my safety? So it also kind of connects to the question about my anger is so overwhelming, right? And I can't find the calm to approach this. So I want to talk about that. Your anger is likely a natural and protective response. It is shielding you from the deeper feelings of helplessness and abandonment that the situation triggered. And anger often serves as a mask for more vulnerable emotions that lie underneath it, like sadness, fear, or loss, right? Because abandonment is really more of an evaluation of what's going on. They abandoned me. You're evaluating their behavior. But what's going on inside of you? You feel helpless, fearful, and lost, right? So the helplessness that you're feeling is likely to be an echo of old wounds, where expressing your feelings led to some kind of threat to your safety. And so this relationship is opening that up, and it makes it difficult to distinguish between what capacities you have now and what capacities you had then. Okay. So when we feel this need to run back to someone that has harmed us, I also want to point out that this is really more of a disorganized attachment response. You mentioned that you think you're anxious, but this is really more characteristic of disorganized attachment because it's the confusion of seeking safety and comfort with the same person that represents a threat. Okay. And that's a painful cycle, but it can be changed and transformed when you do things like intentional inner child work and trauma-focused therapies that help you to rewire these things on mental and physical levels, such as in the nervous system. Okay. So this is what I recommend instead. You want to shift the focus to your own healing journey, right? Why are these patterns emerging for me right now? Why am I turning to run back into a burning building? What is the fear that I actually need to confront here? Where does it come from? And what is it asking of me, my adult self, right? Definitely you want to seek trauma-informed support in therapy. So modalities I highly recommend are like somatic experiencing, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Anyone that's trained in internal family systems theory, especially if they also have been trained in somatic modalities, trauma-informed somatic modalities. And then also just by making an intention to reparent the part of you that feels abandoned and remind yourself that you are capable of creating the stability that you desire. Okay. And you can do it with the support of others. You don't have to do it all on your own. But you really want to take a step back and look at how am I continuing to put myself in danger by returning to this person, and looking at what part is compelling me to do that and what is the other part that is allowing it and needs to step in and make a different decision. The same way that you would see a child, right, going to put their hand on the stove, and you as the adult who knows that's not good for them grabs their hand and pulls it away. That's what you got to do. Okay. So I just want to kind of close this with a more, hopeful message, which is that it may not feel like it right now, but peace and harmony is really possible in relationships, and it's possible for you, even if it feels like it's out of reach right now. Okay. And so this experience, while it sounds very painful, I think can be an opportunity for you to address these parts of yourself that are feeling so desperately triggered, so that you can address them lovingly, intentionally, and with the effort of reparenting that part of yourself, right? So I'm not sure what course this person has purchased. If you're looking for assistance with that, my courses on my Attachment 101 courses and my Healing Attachment courses are really helpful with this. So thank you for asking your question. I hope that was helpful. And to those of you that are here with me live, I'd love to know, does any of this resonate with you? Or do you know someone who's been going through something like this? I'd love to see that in the chat there. And I'm just going to take a pause. I bought your course after ending a 15-year relationship where my needs were constantly compromised for his and his family and kids. When I finally started speaking up, he became abusive, told me he didn't care, and gave me the silent treatment. When I prompted him to reconnect, he had a list of awful things to say and never brought up couples therapy. We've been going for months. That he never brought up in couples therapy. We've been going for months, and I genuinely thought we were making progress. This fits the trauma in my FOI. I don't know what that stands for. How do I build trust in myself to choose better partners? So how do I put trust in myself to choose better partners? So you just start choosing them, right? So that means getting in touch with your signals, getting very clear on what your needs and boundaries might be, and then taking action to honor those needs and boundaries. Someone who behaves this way, they sound like they may be on the narcissistic spectrum. I don't know if that is diagnosable, but it sounds like they were masking in couples counseling. If they never brought this up, they were behaving in couples counseling because there was a witness. And so the relationship worked because you weren't expressing your needs, and that works for someone who is not interested in them, right? So, but then if we have a habit of not expressing them, then there's usually a deeper underlying belief for us that we're not worthy enough, or that our needs are burdensome or what have you. And we're afraid of other people finding that out about us. So we chase people who don't look and don't ask, and basically subtly and not so subtly compel us to keep quiet. And then our attachment anxiety turns on, and it says, well, that's just the way love is. And if I leave them, then I won't have my survival needs met, meaning being in close proximity to someone. So I might as well stick it out. But it sounds like there's another part of you that was kind of rebelling against that, especially if you were pushing for couples counseling, and that you were creating space for it to improve. But if he came out with a whole list of things that he did not share in couples counseling, it sounds like he's been masking. And so now you're sort of getting your attention and your communication and the things you're suggesting and the way he's responding, the truth is revealing itself. And so now you're getting a real picture of what a relationship with this person is like. Right. So how do you learn to trust yourself? By when you see those things and you hear those things, don't keep exposing yourself to it. Don't keep allowing it, right? If you keep allowing it, then they'll keep doing it. And then you won't trust yourself because you keep allowing it, right? So when you're very clear about your needs and boundaries, then you're very clear on what you will and won't allow. And if you allow it anyway, then that's not just them crossing your boundaries, it's also you crossing your boundaries. And that's where the distrust of self comes in, right? So I would say the first step is really getting clear on your needs and boundaries. Then you know what you will and won't do. And then when you do or don't do those things, that's when the trust comes in, right? Let's see. It fits. My dad is narcissistic. Okay, yeah. So I have a playlist on my YouTube channel. It's called what's it called? Codependency, I think, and recovery. Oh, it's called Narcissism and Attachment Styles. And that's a 4-part video series, and it will walk you through some experiences to recover from narcissistic abuse if you've experienced that. It also talks about the overlap with attachment styles and personality disorders, specifically spectrum of narcissism. So you might find that helpful. Makes perfect sense. My motivation to run back into the burning building is spiritual. I'm following orders as a matter of faith. Yeah, that's multi-layered. Thank you for sharing the link, Basil. He has moved out and I feel like the weight has been lifted. Yeah, yeah, I bet it has. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so the other question. I am living with an avoidant partner after we broke up, but I don't have the funds to move out yet. Should I handle this with no contact? Okay. So what do you do when you have broken up with someone, but you still have to live together? That's a really tough question, but we're going to tackle it in this segment. I want to tackle it examining the core issues that might make the situation particularly difficult, and then 4 steps to help you navigate that. So I'm going to start by reading the full question just so we have a little more context. I moved across the country to live with my avoidant partner. It's been 6 months and now we've broken up, but I don't have the funds to move out yet and he won't help me. It is so hard trying to heal from a broken heart while seeing him all the time. Do you recommend doing the no contact rule? And if so, any tips? So first, I just want to acknowledge that it takes a lot of strength to be in this kind of situation. Breakups are hard in and of themselves, let alone trying to process your feelings while you are still living with the ex, especially if they are someone who is unwilling to help you through that breakup. You know, it's kind of like next level challenging. And so it's almost like trying to heal a wound while the thing that caused it is just poking at it every single day, right? But there is a way to navigate this. And really, we want to talk about how can you start to protect your emotional well-being while making a plan to move forward, right? So if you're someone who can relate to this or you've been in a similar situation, just let me know in the chat there. And hopefully by the end of this discussion, we'll have a bit of a roadmap for how to navigate a situation like this. So the first thing I want to address is what some of the core issues might be in this situation. So the first thing we kind of want to address is there is this combination of heartbreak, being in close proximity, and the presence of emotional unavailability. And that is a really tough mix. So when you're living with an avoidant ex, it can feel like every interaction is just a reminder of what you lost. And with the nature of avoidant attachment, there's a struggle to meet emotional needs, even when things are going really well. And so after a breakup, the emotional distance can feel even more painful, almost like it's like rejection on repeat, right? So part of the challenge in this situation really stems from how the relationship even began. So in some cases, and I believe in this situation, the relationship began as a long distance relationship, and then the individual moved in order to move in with them after being in a long distance relationship. So in some cases, avoidant partners can agree to more than they can actually emotionally handle without realizing it. So moving in together might have felt like a big step towards intimacy, but it's possible that maybe they had not experienced what it's like to navigate the daily realities of living together, right? It's a big jump to go from connecting in this really fun, unburdened, fantasy-like space when we are in a long-distance relationship to living together in the day-to-day and dealing with the routines of life, right? So at first, long-distance love can feel safer for avoidant partners because the physical space creates a kind of buffer where they get to feel connected without feeling overwhelmed by too much intimacy or closeness. So in that dynamic, it's easier for an avoidant partner to fall in love with the idea of the relationship rather than fully understanding the reality of those day-to-day um, tasks of being in a relationship. But when our inquirer moved in, the physical proximity shrunk, right? And so now there's both close emotional intimacy and close physical proximity, and that can become overwhelming. And that can turn on things like attachment triggers around a fear of losing your autonomy. And suddenly the relationship isn't safe anymore. So they do what they can to create that space again, which is close up emotionally and put up the wall, right? And so this can lead to a push-pull dynamic and cycle, which is common when we have anxious avoidant dynamics at play. So for those of you that are not familiar, I tend to refer to this as the anxious avoidant trap, and there's a couple of stages that typically occur in this cycle. So first there's that honeymoon phase, right? The closeness phase. And so at the start of the relationship, things feel really emotionally intimate and connected. Both partners feel a lot of comfort and joy. Um, and it almost sometimes it feels like kismet, like, oh, we know we get each other, it's predestined. But over time, and it's been my experience, it's usually between 3 to 6 months, one or both, but usually it's the one that's more avoidant, starts to feel overwhelmed, especially if the proximity closes and it becomes more constant. And so basically, you've hit kind of a trigger point. And over time, as needs and vulnerabilities and conflicts start to arise, the avoidant partner starts to feel like they're smothered or that their autonomy is being threatened. And even simple expressions of emotional needs from their partners is misinterpreted as demanding. And so it creates a lot of internal pressure. And typically, there's very good reasons for this. Most people don't become avoidant because that's the best way they chose to be. It's because there were some messages they received in their early childhood around emotional responsibility, and their autonomy was denied. Okay. That's typically from an enmeshed situation. From a more dismissive situation, it was just modeled for them that emotions were unacceptable, and so they learned to cut themselves off from them internally, and then from anything that might stimulate them externally. Okay. So then what happens is we hit this trigger point, and to alleviate the pressure that it creates, an avoidant partner will start to distance themselves either emotionally, physically, or both. And so they might stop responding to messages, maybe they cancel plans, or they throw themselves into work or other hobbies to have justifiable reasons for creating that kind of distance, and it helps them regain a sense of control. In this situation, it's kind of interesting that they wanted to end the emotional relationship, but they're not helping you to leave their physical space. So this is making me think it's kind of like a seesaw. Like you were emotionally close and the distance was low, so that was comfortable. Now you increase the physical distance, so the emotional part has to go down, but he's not helping you leave, so it's not so intolerable to have you there. So to me, I think what he's doing is he's trying to keep the same proximity going on. And so for the partner, usually this feels abrupt. It feels a little confusing and it can stimulate and spark anxiety. And if you already have a tendency towards it, it's going to make it a little bit worse. And so things can start to escalate. The anxious partner will typically try harder to reconnect, seek reassurance, or express their frustrations, hoping that that will lead to understanding, and understanding will lead to agreement, and that's not what happens. And so it winds up reinforcing the avoidance perception that their partner is too overwhelming, pushy, and whatnot. And so they'll start to pull away even more. And so now we've got all these arguments and misunderstandings, and eventually it may lead to some kind of rupture in the relationship. Now, sometimes the rupture remains and it's just a relationship, the flame that burned brightly but for a short amount of time, and there's no reset. But sometimes there is a reset. So what happens is you shrank the physical distance, or you increased the physical proximity, meaning you got closer, and so the emotional distance the closeness went down, right? But what happens if you move out? They may start seeking closeness again, right? I'm not saying that's what will happen, but sometimes that's what does happen because why? Because you've reestablished the original proximity, which was safe from the get-go. That's what was safe initially, right? But this is not sustainable because relationships, like all things, grow and develop over time, right? So that's why, I consider these relationships to be catalytic relationships for growth because you want to grow, you're going to change, right? And then all the stories that come up become the material and the resources for that change. So in this case, even though it might feel like the relationship is technically over, it can feel like this cycle is playing out in small moments at home. Being around each other every day can create opportunities for those old dynamics to kind of repeat themselves kind of over and over again. But if we understand this dynamic and we can see it and we know what's going on, then we can try to throw a wrench in the works. Okay. So let's talk about the no contact question. So the no contact rule can be a source for healing, and I do have a video on this topic about the benefits of no contact and how to do it right. But when you are living under the same roof, you have to adjust that. It's pretty much impossible, right? And so that means you're going to have to get really good about your boundaries. So you want to keep the communication to the essentials. You only want to talk about house-related matters, bills, groceries, the schedule, things like that. And when you do, you're going to keep your conversations short and to the point. You want to avoid any kind of emotional discussions, and it might be really tempting to want to share your feelings because you're looking for closure or you're looking for some sign of contact, but this is going to backfire on you, okay? Because maybe they'll receive it, but it doesn't mean anything, and you're going to look for it to mean something, okay? So you really want to make sure that you are protecting your own wounds, okay? So avoid emotional conversations. It's not safe in this situation. You want to create some physical distance as much as you can, even in a shared space. So have a room to yourself, make it your sanctuary. Take advantage of opportunities in your schedule for self-care, anything self-reflective, anything that helps you to process your emotions, okay, without looking to him to be some kind of mirror, container, or reflection of them. So it's almost like you're setting up a certain kind of bubble around your emotional well-being. You're limiting your interactions to what's actually necessary, and it's going to reduce the access or exposure, I should say, to the triggers while you're in a shared space. It's relying on some level of compartmentalization, which is necessary. Okay. All right. So in terms of setting boundaries, um, you might do this by having a calm and straightforward conversation. So, I think it would be helpful for both of us if we just clarified some of the practical matters in the home while we're living together. I just need to clarify this so I can have some space to work on my healing or what have you. You can use your own words, but I would definitely I would articulate it in that way. Okay. It doesn't have to be a big confrontation. You might think of it as like setting up a roommate agreement. You just want to clarify who's responsible for what. So there's no room for conflict and you reduce the access to being triggered or the exposure to being triggered. Okay. And if once you set them up, you stick to them. Even if your ex tries to limit test you, because if you haven't done it to this point and you do it now, that might intrigue them and they may start limit testing you, right? Oh, let's have that emotional discussion you wanted to have before. Oh, let's do the things that you said you wanted. And these are all sort of like, how serious? How serious are they, right? Don't fall for that because this person has shown you what they are and are not capable of at this point. Listen. When someone shows you who they are, listen to them. Okay. And the third thing is make a plan to move out. And this might be the most important step. Even if it feels far off, you want to have a roadmap so that you can see the next step in front of you, that you know you have control over that next step, and that's going to allow you to trust yourself more and to have hope, right? So you want to explore your options. Also find out, can you stay with a friend or family member temporarily while you save up? If that's not possible, are there inexpensive rentals out there where you can share with a roommate, right? If that's not possible, take a good hard look at your finances. Maybe you pick up a side hustle or you work remotely to save up for your moving fund, right? Are there any local resources in your community that can help you? Is there like a co-op that you can volunteer at that will give you a discount on food and groceries, that kind of thing. So you want to focus on small actionable steps, creating a budget, all of that. Every step that you take for yourself, that you outline and that you take for yourself, is going to inch you closer to feeling like you can reclaim your life. Okay. And then you also want to make sure that you're attending to what needs healing, because obviously there's something coming up for you in this situation. And so you want to take care of your emotional well-being by setting boundaries first, making a plan second, right? But also recognizing what is the part that's being stimulated. So in this case, I would probably direct you to inner child work. So when you're feeling heartbroken, it can be tied to unmet needs that are not just being mirrored in this relationship, but may stem back to historical material, right? And so as you're starting to reflect on, wow, these powerful feelings are coming up, what are the thoughts that I'm telling myself? What are the urges that I'm having? What are the beliefs that I'm adhering to in the face of this kind of relationship, right? And so that's going to help you acknowledge what were the expectations you had for the relationship. And now you can process those things by grieving them and let yourself grieve that disappointment. And that's going to allow you to ultimately shift to your new goals, right? So we're not ignoring the fact that there's pain there, but you're in a situation where your environment is difficult to mitigate. So that means that you're going to have to be really good about where you're honing your focus. So right now, your focus is on the next step I can take to take more control of my life, to care for my child, to limit the exposure to what brings me pain, and to grieve what I've lost so that I can start attending to the next step in front of me, to what's coming. And then when you are in a safer environment, it's likely it's going to come up again, only now it will be safe for you to really explore that in depth, right? So if you can, definitely find a therapeutic support, find a counselor, find someone that can help you and hold your hand through that process, right? So bringing it back to the original question. Can I survive this by implementing a no contact rule? So I think it's not possible when you're sharing space with someone because there are things you're going to have to speak about. But I think that you can navigate the situation by setting up clearer boundaries, establishing a solid exit plan, and being intentional of taking care of your own inner child by limiting the exposure to triggers in the home, right? And you can do that by creating physical and emotional space, even though you're sharing a home. And I know that's a tough situation, but remember, it is temporary. It's not going to be like this forever, especially if you are putting plans in place. Because a goal without a plan is a wish. So make a plan and let that be your focus. Let that scaffold your mental and emotional energy, and that will get you out of that environment. And then you can start to explore more in depth the grief process that you'll likely need to go through. Okay. And I do believe you have the strength to do it. You wouldn't be here asking me this question if you didn't. Okay. So thank you for offering your question. I hope it was helpful. And I am curious, does this resonate with anyone here? Has anybody had that situation where they've been living with someone and they have felt kind of trapped in the situation? That was perfectly accurate. Oh, I'm glad that was helpful. I have a question about dating. I'm dating someone who's been really sweet and consistent. Last week, I told him a vulnerable experience I had with the last person I dated, and since last week, he's been way less frequent in texting. He hasn't answered messages since Tuesday. I'm not sure if what I told him is connected to him being distant or if it's my mind telling me I did something wrong by telling him not sure about if should contact him and asked if there's something on his mind. Before, when someone was distant, I would lean back, and when he comes back, tell him it's not acceptable for me. But I feel like that hasn't worked either. So I don't know what you told him. So I don't know if it's the content of what you shared or not. to know if it's just my mind telling me I did something wrong. So I would have you breathe and take a pause. I'm noticing a change in behavior. So be a scientist about it. What am I noticing very concretely and very practically that indicates a change in behavior? So last week he would text me twice a day. This week he's only texted me once in 5 days, whatever it is, right? That's a change in behavior. That's all I know for sure. I know that I shared something vulnerable and that leaves me feeling pretty raw and sensitive, but I don't know if that's actually connected to the change in behavior. I'm curious about that, but I don't know it. So I'm going to reach out to this person. Hey, I noticed that last week you used to text me every day. This week you're texting me once in 5 days. Just curious about the change. They say something, probably will be deflective, and you can ask a little more. I understand. Because I was a little worried that what I had shared might have gone a little too deep too quickly. And if that's the case, I would really like to know, right? Because I want to respect, because of this, I enjoy spending time with you and I just want to respect your boundaries around things like that. And let them respond. Then it's really on them to be honest with you or not, right? Okay. Alrighty then, let's check out the last one. How do we break free from the influence of a bad parent and stop repeating those cycles in love? Okay. All right, so this is an interesting question because it's basically how do you heal attachment wounds? Right? Our parents are usually the ones that instill those in us. So how do you heal your attachment wounds? Right? So first, I want to acknowledge that realizing our past can still be influencing our present can be a vulnerable discovery. And it can be overwhelming to imagine that those dynamics that we experienced with a parent, even if it was decades ago, and they might have been someone who hurt or disappointed you, is still showing up in your life, no matter how much time, energy, and effort you have put into evolving into something other than what they modeled for you. And so, and then it pops up in your experience, and that might make you feel frustrated, trapped, or wondering if you're ever going to break free of those patterns in relationships. But recognizing that it is occurring is a first and really important step towards understanding what role this pattern has in your life, right? And so shifting them is absolutely possible. And I think it starts by understanding where those patterns come from, reparenting ourselves through them, and then transforming our relationship with the past so it doesn't control our present or our future. So I really want to, in this segment, kind of walk you through some steps to take, kind of looking at the core issue here. And then I want to guide you through a guided visualization. If you connect to this, then let's do a guided visualization to connect to that energy that may be popping up connected to a parent, so that we can access the larger lesson that helps us reorient ourselves towards whatever insecurity we think may be at the root of it. Okay. So first, let's look at the core issue. As children, our parents or caregivers really shape us in profound ways, right? Even when a parent might be hurtful or even toxic in their behaviors, it can leave a deep imprint on our emotional world. And that imprint can create unconscious patterns that we wind up carrying with us into adulthood. And so when we enter into relationships, we unconsciously seek dynamics that might mirror those early experiences, not because we want to repeat that pain, but because part of us is trying to solve whatever went wrong in the past. We want to relive in order to rewrite that ending and to finally feel loved and accepted in ways that we didn't as children. And so it's almost like a part of us thinks if I find someone who's just like my dad and I can get him to love me in the ways my dad never did, then I'll finally prove myself worthy of love and I can finally let myself feel it, right? or vice versa, with my mom and whatnot. So for a lot of us, those early experiences become buried so deep that it becomes a part of our core identity, even. And then without realizing it, we act out those patterns in our relationships because we're trying to find some kind of resolution. And that can create this feeling of being stuck and frustrated, as if we are doomed to repeat those same painful patterns and dynamics over and over again. But I really truly believe that we are not doomed to repeat the past. What happens is we sometimes try to reject or suppress these patterns and the parts of us that are caught up in them. And it is that suppression, that pushing against, that can force them to pop up in unconscious ways, right? The messenger just is going to knock harder. So, in this segment, let's play with how we can connect to that younger part of us that may have gotten caught up in a dynamic like that and see if we can reframe the story. So let's talk about this idea of reparenting the inner child. So this isn't about erasing or rejecting that younger part of you and the emotional energy that got tied to it when some aspect of you was deemed unacceptable, unlovable, unwanted in some way. Instead, it's really about recognizing that this part of you is coming up now, most likely because you have been successful in creating a safe enough space and container in your life where that part feels like it's safe for me to come out now and to express myself. And as a request for your love, as a request for you to reparent them yourself, as a request for you to revise it without needing to relive it with someone else, right? So when we can meet that part of ourselves with compassion and care, we stop trying to fix it through our current relationships. And we stop trying to find a resolution through someone else's changing that pattern. Instead, we begin to find that connection and that validation within, and I would argue on a spiritual level. Okay, we connect to the essence of who you are. And the more we engage in that inner dialogue, the more access you have to that spiritual essence of who you are, right? So you might start by imagining, what did that younger version of yourself really need to hear? What about speaking those words to yourself now as the loving adult that you've become? Reminding that part of you that they're not alone, that their feelings are valid, and that you are here to protect and care for them, maybe in the ways that your parents didn't. And so this allows you to shift that focus from craving external validation to being able to foster that internal healing and creating a sense of safety and stability within yourself, right? Now, a couple of things I want to note about this before we dive into a guided activity is, even when we've had parents that caused harm in some way, we can find grace on the other side of this by looking for the wisdoms or gifts that that contrast creates. So from a spiritual perspective, even toxic parents can be catalysts for soul growth and evolution. So for example, if a partner was, or if a parent was overly critical, then their behavior might have taught you the importance of self-compassion. If they were emotionally unavailable, they may have helped you to recognize the value of vulnerability and connection. And so while the experience of being hurt is really never justified, it can offer insights into the kind of person we want to become and the kind of relationships we want to cultivate. So we want to try to avoid seeing our past as something we need to escape, and instead try to reframe it as a source of wisdom and information. Information that need not compel us from behind the curtains, but instead inform us in conscious ways. So what has this experience taught me about love, my own boundaries, and my capacity for showing up for myself in a loving way, right? So this can help us to find meaning in our struggles and move forward with a greater clarity and purpose. Okay. So let's dive into a guided exercise. And, I'm talking about this and we're exploring it in a mental and intellectual way, and we can understand this conceptually. But this kind of healing work exists on the emotional and energetic body, on the level of the emotional and energetic body. And so, therefore, the best way to work with it is through embodied and emotionally stimulating practices, which is not always just sitting in a chair and talking to someone, right? Because that stimulates our neocortex and our intellect. And sometimes we've learned how to use our intelligence to skirt around the issues, right? Rather than have to feel them. But our goal in life is to feel our way through it, not think our way around it, right? Otherwise, we start to feel disconnect from our sense of vitality and life force energy. And that makes it hard to connect with people in an authentic way. So let's do a very small, quick exercise for connecting to the inner child, and specifically as it relates to this question. So I invite you, if you are willing now, just to take a breath and to close your eyes and to notice that with the breath, there is an opening up of your lungs, an opening up of your ribs, an opening up of your heart. And there is, in fact, a spaciousness that is created within you, that you have an inner landscape. And while it is broad and spacious and vast, it is not empty. It is filled up with your energy, with the pure light, love, and compassion that is your spirit. Now, I'd like you to imagine dropping your awareness, your mind's eye, dropping it down into the heart. And noticing the way the heart reveals itself to you. The heart is associated with wind or air, and so I'd have you imagine, what is the weather inside your heart today? What's the weather like? Now, I'd like you to find a safe and comfortable spot, finding the safest place to inhabit that weather. And I'd like you to notice that surrounding you, there is a beautiful force field, an energy field. And I'd like you to imagine this being a safe boundary that helps you to feel protected and supported. And this boundary is entirely within your control and is always there, even if you realize it or not. So today we're going to consciously acknowledge it, which gives you greater access to it. Very good. Now, there in the heart, I'd like you to imagine that there is an empty seat in front of you. And we are going to invite your parent, whether they are living or dead, we are going to invite your parent to take a seat in front of you. Now I'd like you to imagine that in your mind, you are rewinding time. You are turning back the clock. And as you do so, you watch your parent grow younger and younger and younger, moving back through the decades, back in time until they are a child sitting on that chair in front of you. And I'd like you to ask that child, what would you have me know? What do I not see or understand about you? What would you have me know? What do I not see or understand about you? And just allow that child to answer. Just take a breath and receive it, whatever it is. Sometimes the answer is not verbal. Sometimes it's a intuition, could be a symbol. They might offer an answer by changing what you see. There could be a memory, could be a sensation in your body. It's all correct. Now we're going to imagine that their physical form is dissolving, and it leaves behind the brilliant luminescence of their soul. their essence that exists beyond this material world, beyond ego concerns, beyond issues of attachment and insecurity. And now you're going to ask their soul, what is the bigger picture that would help me understand our relationship? What wisdom would you have me take away from this? What is the bigger picture that would help me understand our relationship? What wisdom would you have me take away from this? And remain open to receive it in the way it is delivered, trusting that it is always the correct way. And if you're worried, am I imagining this? If your imagination is helping you out, that's wonderful. Bravo. Your imagination is a big help here, and it's how this part of you speaks to you. Okay, and now you're going to invite your own inner child into this space. And remember, this child is protected by your boundary and protected by you. So you're going to invite your own inner child into this space. The part of you that feels unfulfilled, mistreated, or somehow unloved by this parent, the part of you that compels you towards relationships that seem repetitive in nature, as if you are trying to relive, to revise this wound. Invite that child into the space and allow it to witness the spiritual essence of your parent and to hear the wisdom they're offering. And reassure that inner child that their pain is valid. There was no justification for it, but their helplessness is no longer necessary because you, your adult self, is now in charge. And you have all the access and resources of your spiritual essence and source energy at your back. And they don't have to carry this burden anymore. You are strong enough now to carry it for both of you. And just allow that inner child to relax and to show you what they'd rather be doing rather than carrying this helpless feeling. Because now they're free to do it. Very good. And so we say thank you now to your parent's spirit, and we allow it to just kind of drift back and take a step back. And I imagine you might hold your own inner child close to you, protecting them inside your energy bubble, your force field, knowing that they are always protected and cared for, and here you are to reparent them as time goes on. And so just take a snapshot of that picture in your mind. And on your next breath, you can release it, letting go of that practice. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And so just taking a moment to let that experience settle into your body, trusting that the insights you have gained will continue to work their magic without any additional efforting from you and your unconscious mind, body, and spirit. And you have the will to reparent and care for any other child parts that might arise in the future when they're ready to also be processed and reintegrated into the heart in this way. And they will show up when you need them most. So let's bring this to a close. Breaking free from the influence of our parents is really not about rejecting our past, but changing and transforming our relationship to it and reorienting ourselves towards the insecurities they might have seeded. And when we reparent our inner child and we reframe our experiences and we shift our relationship to our old wounding, that is when we step into the power that we have to create the life and the relationships that reflect love, safety, and the joy that we truly desire. So if this is something that you enjoyed or you're ready to go deeper with it, this is the kind of work that we do in my online courses, which you can check out on my website, briannamcwilliam.com. For more examples of this kind of work explicitly, you can check out a playlist on my YouTube channel. It's called Healing the Inner Child with Parts Work, and there will be some exercises similar to this. We'll leave a link to that in the replay of this video. So with that, we are at the end of our time here. Thank you to all of you that came and for watching. If this resonated with you, of course, I'd love to see, a comment there in the chat. And please feel invited to come and join us when we pop in again to do our live next month. So I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for the comments. I'm glad that was helpful. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the hearts. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I hope that